Welcome back, guys. My next guest, this one's going to be very special for me personally. He's been married for 40 years, 3 children, 5 grandchildren. He's one of 10 kids. And this is my favorite fun fact about this guy. He is painfully a Cleveland Browns fan, executive vice president of the Northeast regional manager at Lamar Advertising, Paul Gartland. Good to see you.
See you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So I say this one's special, and I'm not going to let you get off from not talking about being a Browns fan, but I say this one's special because when I first started my career here at Lamar 20 years ago, working for John Miller, I was immediately assigned to the Northeast region, and that is the region that you've held as the EVP regional manager over a very long time. So I say I grew up in your region. And you've kind of been someone that I've always looked up to from the beginning, even to today. And I have to give some of my your former GMs and current GMs, maybe they were sales managers, maybe they were AEs, but those are the guys and girls that kind of took me under their wing, which was super fun to have grown up in your region. So I'm going to give a shout out. It's a lot of people: Gio, Stan, Murph, Sean, Cockrell, Kiblin, another Jim, a Tom, a Duddy, Pete, Victoria, Tim, George, Peacock, Biter, Brent, Andy, Shane, and Avondot. And I'm sure I'm missing someone, but
you got most of them.
Yeah. And the ones that I left off, maybe it was by design as well. But it's special, and we've had a handful of our EVPs, regional managers, on the podcast before. So maybe give like a very, very high level to our listeners how Lamar is structured regionally without going deep into your career, and then we'll work our way backwards.
Right. So the flow chart's pretty simple. I mean, my boss is Sean Riley, the CEO. Then there's myself and 5 others. There's 6 regional managers, and then territory managers. Territory managers, I have 2. They manage their office and a subset of offices, and then our general managers. And then, of course, within each office, you have department heads and everybody else.
Yeah. And in my role at the time when I worked in national sales was kind of like a national sales support, meaning that any local AEs that had campaigns that would run across multiple markets, they would come to me here at corporate, and I would make their job easier. But me being me, and you being Paul Gartland, I immediately kind of inserted myself to like, hey, can I come to your regional meetings? Can I talk to your sales managers? And yeah, it was just, those guys are like brothers and sisters to me. And I think one of them, you guys even threw me a bachelor party in New York that was super random and caught me by surprise. So yeah,
I remember it was since I was a impromptu host. Your bachelor party consisted of dinner, and I was in my hotel by 8:30 saying, good luck with it. That was about it.
Yeah, it was an awesome time. So Cleveland Browns fan. So obviously
Yes.
You're from Cleveland, you're from the land. Why still be a fan?
Gosh, whatever else you're going to ask me, I could probably answer. I don't have an answer to that one. It's hard. Every year you're hopeful, and we end up about the same spot. So right now, we're already looking forward to the draft. That's what we do.
Yeah. Well, so you tank games, and then you'll draft like 3 or 4 quarterbacks, and then you'll rinse and repeat every year. Yeah.
And do it again next year.
Yeah. So one of 10 kids, what was that like growing up?
That was cool. I was 8th of 10, with 10 kids too. It was very important to our parents that we all went Catholic education. So 10 kids, Catholic education. We never really had much money, but it was an abundant childhood. It was great. It was fun.
Yeah. And boys, girls, what was the mix there?
6 girls, 4 boys.
Oof. And was the expectations that you had to protect the girls, or was it free for all for everyone?
They did just fine. They were pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially being Cleveland folks as well. So I love that. So let's start at the very, very beginning. Like, what first drew you to advertising, and then obviously ultimately Lamar, where you've spent the vast amount of your career?
I grew up in Cleveland, as you mentioned. I went to college at Xavier in Cincinnati, and I was a marketing major, and I loved it. Of all the classes I took and your prerequisites and everything else, I really liked marketing. And my first marketing class was Principles of Marketing. And of course, throughout college, I worked with college advisor. At some point, you need to get a job with your degree. And he coached me that with marketing, you probably need to get into sales and either stay in sales and sales management or branch out into marketing. So that's kind of the way it went down.
Yeah, and you went about it a little bit different of a way, kind of similar to my career. Maybe that's why I gravitated towards you. But so you were a senior at Xavier while still being an account executive, beginning earlier career. So what was that like, balancing those early days?
Well, all along, I was taking extra classes. My hope was to graduate in 3.5 years, and I was on target, but I also needed a job. Um, I was married and had a child. And so when I started, I was able to push all my classes first semester senior year to night classes, so I could work full time, all but one. So basically, I graduated in 3.5 years with the exception of one class. So as hard as that was, it was only for 3 months. It was October 1st till end of the semester, so it wasn't brutal in the big picture.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like? Kind of, I guess, more finishing in 3.5 years, less about having a job in college while having an actual grown up job while finishing courses, but finishing in 3.5 years. How did that kind of shape your career mindset where you are today and in the early days of how you?
It's kind of funny, not to sound like an old guy, but this generation and my generation, and then peel it back one more, my parents' generation. And not to be critical, work ethic was different. So for those 3 months, you leave the house at 7 in the morning, get home at 10 at night, and then study. So you're pretty worn out. And then for the rest of the 40 years I've been here, all I got to do is work Monday through Friday. It's pretty easy. And most days I'm done by 5 o'clock. So it's cool to do that on the front end to appreciate everything else going forward.
Yeah, and I love that philosophy because I think, yeah, and I'm at the age now, I'm 46, where I can give that old man advice as well. But it's, my parents always taught me that as well, like, whether it's sports or career. It's like, if you do the heavy work up front, like I ingrain that in my kids that are in athletics today as well. It's like, if you do the hard work today at gym, if you do the hard work hitting off the tee every morning and you out rep everyone, it's going to be super easy by game time. And in your case, yeah,
it still worked. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. But it's preparing you to that moment where, yes, it's really hard, but you're so prepared. Like, I just got out of a meeting with 2 of my employees, and they diligently last week just prepped and almost to exhaustion. And then they rolled into it, and I sat back and watched and listened. And I was like, okay, perfect. You had that mindset of setting the hard work, the dedication up front, and the presentation part was super easy, almost to the point where it's like, did I miss something? So kind of that's where you feel you were at as well. It was like, give it your all during this time, and days are going to get significantly better.
Right. And it did.
Yeah. I love that. So the early years as an AE and the different roles that you held, what did you learn about selling out of home that is kind of still stuck with you today, especially with a medium that we've significantly evolved from even since I started, let alone when you started yours? How long have you been at Lamar?
40 years.
40 years. Yeah. So double.
Marriage 40 years, at Lamar 40 years. 1985 was a big year.
Yeah. Huge year. Had a kid, had a family, started at Lamar.
It's funny when you get into sales, again, my college advisor, you say you need sales experience while in college. So junior year, I took a job for 1 semester, worst job I ever had. Worked for a stock broker, telemarketer. And twice a week, I'd go in from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night. I had to make 90 phone calls and to generate 3 leads. I wasn't licensed to sell anything. That was my job, and it was brutal. I mean, you got hung up on the easy ones, or when you just got hung up on it. You telemarketed in sports marketing. You know the warm welcome you get. So I did that, and I got the experience. But one thing, the perception when you go into sales, big boy job, Lamar, was that, and you hear people say, the gift of gab, or if you're a good bullshitter, you're a great salesperson, and it couldn't be further from the truth. The best salespeople are credible, they're empathetic, they're good people, they're good listener. The opposite of what you would think prior to ever getting into sales. And that's true today. Whether it's management, whether it's managing your kids, it's grandkids, it's all those things hold true today.
Yeah, so that authenticity and being your true self is what people truly gravitate towards. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason why they say the perception of a used car salesman. It's not because a used car salesman was, very empathetic and wanted to make sure that you had the right car. They just wanted to sling cars, right?
Yes.
So as opposed to your point. Yeah, I love that. What from a specific billboard perspective, what has anything changed? I know a lot has changed, but like is there one thing that outside of just like how you sell, but is there one thing that's always kind of been consistent in the space today as it was 40 years ago?
Well, so technology and marketing and sales support are all been transformed. My marketing research or sales support when I was selling senior year of college was sitting at my kitchen table in our apartment on Sundays, cutting out newspaper ads and who I was going to call on that week. Uh, and we'd prospect through radio, and you probably don't even know what a newspaper or a local radio station is, but they existed. And technology, computers, we didn't have computers, if you can believe that. I mean, to make a phone call, you had to go to a thing called a phone booth, which I'm sure you've never seen one of those either. And when I started, it was 10 cents for a call, then it was 25, and then we got really sophisticated. We actually had a calling card. Instead of going to the phone booth, but you had a code to hit so you don't have to put a change in. But now it's a virtual world, as you know, cell phones, computers, marketing support, data is unbelievably granular. We didn't have any of that.
So the idea of prospecting hasn't changed. It's just how you go about it, what the tools are used. It's still what brands are out there, what are companies doing, how do I tap into that?
Right. And that remains the same.
Yeah, I love that. So next step. So you're selling for Lamar as a local rep. What's the next transition? What's the next career at Lamar?
Well, I had 3 different sales jobs those first few years. I started kind of entry level in college. It was a satellite office out of Dayton, Ohio, northern Kentucky. And I could commute from where I was living going to Xavier. And after about a year, they moved me to Dayton, Ohio they wanted me to be their number 2 rep. And I only had 1 year experience, but we did it. And I commuted from Cincinnati, a little bit over an hour each way. Did that for a year. And then I moved back. This is my third sales job, back to northern Kentucky. And it was me, and I got to hire a salesperson. So like quasi-management, but basically we were co-salespeople. And my last co-salesperson when I was in northern Kentucky, ironically, was a college buddy, Tom Fahey, who's also a regional manager with Lamar now.
Yeah, shout out to Tom Fahey.
Yeah, shout out to Tom.
Yeah, great guy. I forgot that there was a relationship there. So, and then you've held several like quick transitions. So you were the assistant GM in Baton Rouge, then GM in Gulfport. Those are pretty significant career responsibilities. But give us that take. Like, what was that like? Those rapid changes and kind of those challenges. And
yeah, so we went from northern Kentucky second round to Gulfport, Mississippi as sales manager, and was there for a year, and then went to Baton Rouge as assistant GM, which was fantastic experience. I mean, I knew sales, and I thought I was pretty good at it. I'd been doing it about 5 years between selling and sales manager, but I really didn't have much deep exposure to operations and contractors and real estate, and then the political lobbying. So for 1 year, I did anything but sales, and that's what I did. So it was kind of like an MBA on steroids. So a year later, GM job opens up, and I was so much more well-versed than probably other candidates just because I had that experience. I really lucked out, truthfully, to have that opportunity in Baton Rouge.
yeah, that's phenomenal.
Came back as GM, they had just legalized dockside gaming. And so the Mississippi coast boomed to none of my doing. I was just the benefactor. So we crushed it. We did great just because we were in the right place at the right time, really. And my fellow regional managers at the time who all retired would point out to me every time they saw me that I was lucky. And I would agree. I said, you are right. I am lucky. But we'll take it. And then we went public, as you know, in 96. And in April of 97, we bought a company in Pennsylvania and upstate New York called Penn Advertising. At the time, it was our largest acquisition, $100 million. And it was 8 offices. And I was from the Midwest. So to the Midwesterners, I didn't talk funny. Everyone else from the South talked funny. Which, of course, I had that on the receiving end when I moved to Mississippi. Oh, boy, did I talk funny. So that's it. I've been in this job regional for 28 and a half years. We've gone from 8 offices to 21. A lot of that's, of course, on the back of our checkbook. We're publicly traded and still acquiring companies and growing the business.
So did you, because I don't want to glaze over the fact that you were in Gulfport. What was hurricanes? You were dealing with stuff you probably were never ever used to, right?
No, it's true. I mean, we had to have a hurricane plan. You had to have contractors on queue. And part of the hurricane plan was you were not an executive. You were out there taking down sections. You were staking them to the ground. You were trying to save your structures from destruction. And if with the sections in there with a panel in that, it's a big kite, basically. So we wanted just an empty frame. And the most valuable structures went first, and there was an order of things, and it was very specific. But yeah, I had never been exposed to any of that.
Yeah, it's like a whole nother world. So going back to that, because it's one thing, it's about the authenticity as a salesperson, but then as you're kind of talking through doing everything but sales, and then when that moment happened when we bought Penn, you raised your hand.
I did, and I had you remember Jerry Marchand? He was my regional manager when I lived in Gulfport. Very colorful guy. I love Jerry.
Yes.
And Jerry thought highly of me, unlike my regional managers, fellow regionals who said, "You're lucky." And Jerry said, "You can do this." And of course, he played. He said, "No one else wants to move up to that cold weather anyway, so it's got to be you." But right. Yeah, we ran. I mean, my wife's from Cleveland also. We had family up there. And it's, I'll tell you, though, it was still hard to leave Gulfport. We had made good friends. We still in touch with them today. We still go down there every now and then.
Yeah. So as we're the two old guys talking, right, and you talk about like hard work, but like what advice would you give there? Because in that situation, you could have stuck with the comfortable. Like you're really good at sales, obviously, but instead you put your head down and you learn something significantly different than what you went to school for from the marketing side, at least from a perspective of like, all of a sudden you're ops, as you'd mentioned, you're making sure from a municipality, people are pro billboards, and you're going through that entire process. What advice would you give for the young generation about, rolling your sleeves up and doing the job that maybe wasn't what you initially thought it was?
Yeah, I would kind of common sense stuff. Take it all in. If you want to advance, you want to do well, you want to be successful, ask good questions, have a thirst for knowledge, on an interview, your first interview, a great interview, a question to ask the prospective employers. Hey, tell me what your best salespeople do. I want to be the best. What do they do?
Yep.
And tell me about a career advancement plan. I want to advance. I mean, you're sort of selling yourself, but it's true. You really do want to learn these things, and you want to go in as well prepared as you can, and you want to hit it. You want to hit it out of the park right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I was reading something the other day. You can't see it on my board, but I have it drawn out kind of as a reference often. Is, early days, it was, climb the corporate ladder is what we always hear. But the reality of it is this podcast, leadership podcast that I was listening to, it talks about it more as like a pyramid. And I share this often with Faith, our producer, and our other employees. It's like, this isn't a ladder. This is to your point, you can, and what I do on the pyramid and what they did on the podcast, it's like you're filling in the base and creating this, what are you really good at, but also simultaneously, what do you love to do? Right. So then when a Jerry Marchand taps you, you have enough experience, you have that confidence to say, hey, I can run a plant, like backfault, I can sell, but I can also make sure like when disaster strikes or when political uprise happens and, we have to hold down the fort type situation. Now that pyramid perspective, you filled in the base pretty solid. So when executive management is looking at you, for our listeners, it's a lot easier to say like, okay, Paul was willing to learn. Paul was willing to do more than just what that, you could have easily said like, well, that's not in my job description, so you need to hand that off to someone else. And I like to say that's the quickest way to find yourself unemployed real fast.
I was fortunate too, and today, again, sound like the old guy. People aren't willing to move, and you think about it, things have changed. There's two incomes, and why would one spouse give up a career? And early on, I told Margaret, my wife, I said, look, I want to advance as far and as fast as I can. And if I trip and fall, or if you're tired of it, we'll move back to Cleveland, Ohio. And that's what we did. So we put our head down and sprinted. It was funny. The first big move we made from Cincinnati to Gulfport, we're driving down. And she says, how much more money are you going to make? I said, well, about that. I said, if we make budget that month, I'll make a few hundred more than I'm making now. And she said, well, what's the track record of where we're going? I said, well, Lamar bought this company 17 months ago and they haven't made budget yet. So that was a big hit.
You wait to say that when you're in the car driving, right?
Yeah.
Perfect time to turn around.
So I was fortunate that I had a wife willing to move. That was a launcher for me, career launch.
Yeah. And this is very, especially, maybe our competitors a bit, but that's a unique thing within Lamar. Early days of my career, I saw a lot of people that were like, they're still AEs. There's a lot of Northeast folks. And look, that's great if that's your career path and that's what you want to do. But, there are a lot more people, to your point, that say, hey, if I want to take this role, you think about the Baton Rouge plant, there's a lot of solid GMs that have started as like campaign coordinators and just raised their hand. Shout out to Chris Avendot, who I love his career because he started as a rep right when I did, and he was in Rhode Island, and then he took a sales manager job, in Florida?
Yep, Fort Myers.
And then he made his way around. I forget the
GM in Erie, PA, and then Columbus,
and now
Ohio,
he's territory manager in Columbus, Ohio, right? So that's huge. So yeah, the willingness, not only, maybe not everybody's career is like, hey, do you have to move, but, be willing is the phrase that I always think of.
If you look around to the fellow regional managers, every one of us moved.
Yeah, that's true.
Most of us multiple times.
Yeah, and you're one of 6 of the regional managers. And did you know that 2 of them started their career, Denise and Tom, and wait, maybe 3, started their career in Alexandria, Louisiana?
Oh, wow! Interesting
fact, little tidbit. So everything happens in central Louisiana is where you catapult your career at Lamar. So leadership, and that became kind of a turning point in your career. For your confidence or your leadership style, what was it? Was it confidence that you kind of gained through experiences on, learning new things and battling through? Did that affect your leadership style? What was the thing that kind of finally gave it like, hey, I can't fake this anymore. Like, I'm actually pretty good at this.
Well, the first job I had was really managing people, was in Gulfport as sales manager. And truthfully, to a degree, you got to have ice water in your veins and don't blink. And I was terrified. Here I moved my family down, 2 kids, expecting our third. And if I hit it out of the park, I might make a couple $100 more, but it was all in the goal of this wasn't the last stop. And when I got there, again, they were not making their budget. And it was clear to me quickly I had to turn over that sales staff. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't going to be popular. So we slowly did it and evolved, and we did great. We really, they were terrific, each one that I hired. And so to your question, that's probably it. I was thinking, okay, I could do this.
Yeah. And look, sometimes that's difficult, but that's the testament of a true leader, right? Is someone that's willing to make the hard decisions in hard situations. And,
right.
Especially for a company that truly cares about its people, it had to have been. And look, maybe your wife wanted those extra $200, $300, so gotta make some moves there. So I want to move kind of more towards like Lamar's evolution and then just the industry. You kind of touched on a handful of them, but you've been a part of Lamar through like enormous changes. So what do you think is kind of maybe the biggest shifts that our company has gone through from when you first started, besides fax machines?
Yeah, well, technology, and but that's any industry.
Yep.
When we went public, that I think we had 27 or 30 offices, and now we've got 160. And oh, by the way, we also have a transit division, an airport division, and a local division. And so going public transformed us in a big way, size wise. That was huge. And our sort of playbook on growth and development, I wouldn't say it's unique, but I would say Lamar does a very good job at each sort of element: acquisition, greenfield development, digital conversion. We got a strong, and Sean Riley will tell you about it, just strong management, strong GM, strong department heads, and we're fortunate. We can roll at a high speed.
Yeah. And so the rise of digital, the rise of data, the rise of programmatic, I know when I personally started pushing towards programmatic 14 years ago, you were the first person I called, if you remember. And I was like, hey, I don't think this is going to be easily adopted, but so let's talk through that. You've made some tough decisions throughout your career where it's not the popular thing, but I remember calling you and saying like, hey, this thing isn't going to be big yet, but I have my finger on the pulse here, meeting with a lot of brands. They keep talking about this platform. We're seeing these companies, which is comical now to even say this out loud, but we're seeing more of like Facebook continue to evolve and get bigger. And there's this company called Google that they're selling ad search now, but so that's a difficult thing for a company that, we always talk about. It's like, well, why change something that's doing great? It's making money. But you were the first call that I made, and you've always been, not just you, but it's, a part of your leadership is your leaders underneath you kind of embraced it as well. Now, some of them still to this day heckle me on it, but what do you feel that was like from your seat that has helped Lamar in general? Because you were also one of the first, regional managers that accepted a digital billboard in your market in Pittsburgh, that being Pittsburgh and Baton Rouge. But how do you think you've helped Lamar adapt and kind of stay ahead of those times?
I don't think I do anything special. I'm always thinking, always open-minded. You stay pretty worldly, plugged in, see what's going on out there technology-wise and everything else. It's funny if my wife is watching this or watches this, she's going to say, "You got to be kidding me! You're the least tech guy there is," and it's the truth. And I was bright enough to know I didn't have to create it. I didn't have to make it. I just kind of imagined it. Hey, it'd be cool if we could do this. And oh boy, with AI, I have no idea where that goes, but it's, it keeps me up at night. I'm kind of excited about it. It's pretty cool.
My wife says the same thing, by the way, because I don't know how to work our TV remote through my phone. She's like, "Aren't you the head of innovation and supposed to be, the tech guy?" I was like, "Listen, sometimes you just want to come home and unplug." But that's at times it's a tough decision. We have Bobby Switzer, who was basically the godfather of digital screens in the out of home space. I mean, he brought that idea to Kevin years ago, but it's also, you have to put your name on that, right? You have to embrace X. You have to embrace, even this sounds crazy, but 40 years ago, bringing email into the office place, that probably threw a lot of people for a loop, right? But you have to put your name on something and say, yes, I believe that I will take this CapEx expense to launch a digital and test it in Pittsburgh. Yes, I will embrace programmatic. Yes, I will endorse Salesforce. But what's the downside of kind of being the one guy in the room or one woman in the room that says like, let's think about this a little bit more?
Well, I've experienced this a few times, and basically you get beat up in the locker room. That's the downsides of it.
Yeah.
Downside of it. The digital's interesting. I was at a meeting with regional managers way back when in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, more of a retreat, 2-day talk about ideas, initiatives. At the time, we had the one digital up in Baton Rouge, and we didn't do well with it. It was the first for Lamar. Technology was clunky, it was heavy, it was expensive. It literally needed 7 air conditioners because it would overheat. We didn't know how to sell it. I think we were selling 10 slots at a time, which was kind of diluting it a little bit. We did everything wrong. It was on a great location right there by corporate. And so we discussed it out in Jackson Hole. Kevin Riley was CEO at the time, our current chairman, and we talked about it, and there was debate amongst the regionals. And I said, I think we could do it. I think technology is going to come down in price. I think it's going to be more efficient, more energy efficient, lighter weight, better quality, all the things that happen. But that's nothing brilliant on my part. That's technology. It just improves, right? Your television, it improves. So at the end of the day, we were debating, and Kevin sort of broke it up, and he laid out the covenant. And I sort of use this with my GMs at meetings today. If we're coming up with new ideas or initiatives, I want their feedback, and I want them to bring them to me. So Kevin said, here's the covenant. It is healthy to debate these things, but at the end of the day, we need to leave this room united. We need to sell it to the field. So he said, let's go around the room now. Who would put up digital next year? And I said, I want 10. To your question, my fellow regions looking at me like, you idiot, man. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But I had something in mind, and what I had in mind was I had Stan Geyer in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who's phenomenal to this day, the best GM, and an innovator, a risk taker, cares about the company. So I went to Stan. Basically, I was shut down in Jackson Hole. No, Kevin said, no, we're not doing it. There's not enough buy-in. Fair enough. Next week, I go visit Stan. I said, Stan, I think we could do this. You got great poster distribution, 15 account executives, and they're really pros. I said, you guys can sell it. We can sell it out in the year for the entire first year. And it took 3 meetings because he had to talk to the sales staff and everybody else, and we're in. So I didn't call Kevin. I wimped out. I called Sean, who was in M&A at the time. And I said, Sean, I think we could do this. And he said, well, Kevin said, no, so we're out. I said, Sean, what if I pre-sold it, all 6 slots, at the time we did 6, for an entire year? And it's it takes most of the risk out of it. Yep. So he kind of whispered and said, go ahead, give it a shot. So here we are, 6,000 digital billboards later in Lamar, and God knows how many industry-wide. But yeah, that one popular. And, another one you mentioned, Salesforce. To a degree, that was me too. I went to Kevin and said, hey, we don't have any sales software. And industry with much smaller sales departments do, and they swear by it. And Kevin said, well, I don't want to spend the money. We'll develop our own. So I went then to our IT guy, Ed, and said, yeah, we can do it. Our team could do it, but I can't even start the project for 2 or 3 years. We're too busy. And so then I went to Sean, not Kevin, Sean. I said, Sean,
I love this.
How about I do it in each of my plants, Salesforce, and I'll pay for it at the plant level. It will not be a corporate expense. You'll never feel it. So same thing. Sean whispered, well, okay, give it a shot. Here we are, Salesforce. So people don't like me for that either. A lot of account executives who have not embraced it, they want to beat me up in the locker room too.
Hey, but look, I think the tenacity that you've had, maybe that's this is the moment, Paul, right here. It's the Cleveland Brown fan in you that has been tenacious your entire
I'm used to getting my ass kicked, right?
Right? You're used to it. So here we are. But no, I think that's great. Look, I'll never forget, especially being, the guy that handled the Northeast region. That poster network was amazing. The only issue with the program or that network was it was sold out, so we could never sell it nationally to anybody. And Stan was very proud of that. But yeah, I mean, I think that being a strong leader, the ability to take significant risk, and there's a few that we could talk through that I know we can't talk about publicly, but there was a handful of risks that were out there. And we'll just say for the listeners, like, those billboards are now all blank and still have no paid vinyl on them in New York City. And, those were opportunities, getting the MTA. It's being able to know when is a good deal. But what I love about it, and it leads into my next question to you, is you went to the people on the ground first. It wasn't a ego decision that like, hey, you know what? I'm going to make this risk as a leader, as an executive. And if it works, then I'm going to look like a hero. But instead, yes, you had that tenacity, you had that vision in the tech and believing in the technology, but you went to the field, you went to the people, and you said, hey guys, can we do this? And if they had said no, who knows where we'd be today, right?
That'd be the end of it.
Yeah. So
I needed their buy-in.
Yeah. So my question is, the big thing about Lamar, and I think a lot of our listeners realize this now, but, we're publicly traded, but yet we have 40 years, 20 years, which is funny because I was the young guy early days, but you have this almost still family run company, right? Where everyone feels that they own a part of the company, they're part of it, but that culture continues to evolve. So, what role do you play within your region on keeping? And I could help you answer this because I just rattled off half the people that have still been there when I started. But how do you keep that culture, and what is the culture that you share within your region itself?
Well, what's changed in my 40 years is we have a lot more offices, but the culture has not changed. And if it sounds crazy, how's the culture not changed? You go from 27 offices to 160. We're still decentralized.
Yep.
Our general managers still manage the profit center. You hear Kevin and Sean preach it all the time, the golden rule, and it's real. I mean, you treat others the way you want to be treated. You can't be an ass as a general manager and keep that job for long at Lamar. It's just not a cool thing. So within each office, it's its own family. The culture's the same. It's just multiplied exponentially ever since we went public.
Yeah. So communication is obviously key. So how do you, with new technology, not say, people misconceive technology as like, oh, well, we're trying to remove an AE or you're trying to remove the back and forth relationship process. But how do you stress the importance of being transparent communication as your team kind of navigates through these new techs and even adding new markets that were, once another billboard company? I know Columbus, we bought years ago from Clear Channel and have mashed that into the Lamar culture. But how does communication kind of continue to stay paramount in your leadership role?
Well, for one thing, it's one thing that's gotten much easier with technology. It's a virtual world, and boy, did COVID teach us that.
Yeah.
So you really could pretty much be anywhere at any time, even if it was virtually. There's still, you mentioned a new office like Columbus or Philadelphia a few years ago. It's still not replaceable showing up live and walking around the building and shaking hands and talking to people and being genuine and sharing the fact that you care and that you're confident the company is going to be good for them. And that's still irreplaceable. You still do that. And actually, I enjoy that. I was in Philly last week, walked through the building, was in Williamsport the week before. I mean, I really do like that. You can't replace it, but it's so much more efficient. Email, virtual, you can't hide. I mean, if I want to get a hold of you, I can get a hold of you. And of course, cell phone and everything else. And the importance of communication, not only do they need to understand and believe in whatever initiatives the company has going on, and they change as times change. But they need to buy in and they need to be part of the solution. Kevin's covenant. Hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? And you want that buy-in, you want the feedback, and I don't have all the answers. And we've got, Stan Geyers out there. We got some bright folks, and we mine that information from the field. So communication is important. It's significant. It's a big part of the story of our growth.
Yeah, and then the last thing is the relationship side of things. I know, Kevin told us years ago, Ross and I were chatting with him, and he said, no matter how much you guys continue to evolve technology, the one thing that has to be constant is that relationship with the local AE and the local advertiser. And then obviously beyond that, the local GM and their relationship with city council, the local real estate manager, and it's, folks that are in the field there selling land. How has that evolved, and why do you stress relationships so much in your role?
Well, for the most part, the significance of those relationships has not changed. It might even have taken a little more heightened importance as we grow and we're into new geographies and new states and new markets. We really got to educate and communicate and build relationships quickly. We're a heavily regulated industry. We need to know those folks and be friends with those folks. They need to understand our industry, what we are not, what our capabilities are, how we are good community partners. And the only way to do that is through relationships. And when you're going into a new market through an acquisition, again, it's heightened. You got to speed up. You don't have the luxury. Hey, I'll get to know them over the next 10 years. No, they're passing us. City Hall's passing something next month. You better meet them pretty quickly. So it's important, and speed is important.
Yeah, and the speed is helped by the technology, but yeah, to your point, the relationship side of things, I think, in my opinion, I think, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast, I've said this to multiple on panels that I've spoken at as well. I think more and more people, COVID helped heighten tech and hiding this kind of like virtual world. But I think people, it's why live events and why live concerts draw the biggest amount of people, biggest amount of advertisers as well, especially with FIFA World Cup coming up. But people crave like that authentic touch, in-person conversations. And, for you, how many markets as a region, do you handle?
21 plants, 21 profit centers.
21 profit centers. And how many total employees are underneath you? A lot.
It's a moving number as we acquire, but give or take 700.
Yeah, so 700 people. And as much as you, and I know you're such a humble person, but 700 people want to talk to Paul Gartland. So leaning on technology helps you, but what is that importance of you being present in person? And I know it's difficult at times, but it's also important. But how do you maintain that across so many different states and so many different markets?
Yeah, it's gotten harder just because of sheer numbers. When it was 8 offices, I could walk through every office with every quarter. And a lot of what I do now is beyond just managing my managers. A lot of it's acquisitions, other things, sometimes political, sometimes lobbying still. But it's at the end of the day, it's still important. Like I said a minute ago, I really do enjoy walking through the buildings. They seem to be happy that they got I represent corporate to the field, but I also represent the field to corporate. So I'm kind of right in between. And then I have a lot of corporate folks walking through the building. I would still say I'm the field. I'm not corporate, but it's good to hear from me. They have questions. Hey, what's Lamar doing? What big picture things? We got any acquisitions going? I mean, and it's good for them to feel that they can call me, talk to me, ask me. I'm available.
Yeah, see, this is where we have story time and where I'm a bit envious of the Northeast managers GMs meeting that we used to have, or you used to have, and I used to come attend. So we're going to tell the story of Nemacolin. You remember this resort where you had one of your conferences?
Yeah. You talking about our hotel debacle, our rooms?
Yeah. So let's share with our guests. I'll give you my little story, and then you can add to it because this is amazing. So I'm early in my career, and all I'm doing is getting every chance that I can to come up and see Paul, talk to his GMs and sales managers. And John Miller, at the time, my boss, our EVP of sales for the company, headed up national sales. So, I asked him like, hey, I'd love to come up, talk about some new advancements. I think we were talking about like weather triggers on our digital, or how do you sell mobile and out of home? And John's like, yeah, you can come. So long story short, we fly up and we have to fly into Pittsburgh, and John and I rent a car, and, I'm excited because this is my first big boy corporate travel meeting, having come from baseball. It's like, this is exciting for me. And I know we rolled up into this absolutely phenomenal resort called Nemacolin, and it is everything that you can imagine. And for our listeners that have been there, it's this beautiful resort. And, we check into the hotel, and John and I disperse. I'll spare our listeners the side story there of the bellman and his comment. And we get to our rooms, and there's butlers for all of us. Now, for our shareholders, this was trade, and this was not an outlandish expense. It was all trade, so it was under the caveat there. But that was, to me, I was like, whoa, this is what we do as a company. But I'll let you kind of tell more of the story.
That is not what we do as a company. And to all our shareholders, it's not how we roll.
Yeah.
We were at Nemacolin, and it is a plush resort, but we got, if their room ratings are A, B, and C, we got the D's. That's what we ordered.
Yeah.
When we showed up, they had a booking error, and the only rooms available were the A pluses with butlers.
Yeah.
So at breakfast, we're all joking around. Hey, how do you tip your butler? What do you use your butler for? One story was, if you remember, Brett Heidelbaugh and Harrisburg, they kept reiterating, hey, we'll do anything. We'll clean your shoes for you. Don't iron a shirt. We'll do everything. And most of us never had a butler before. And Brett used his butler to call his sales team because they were having a sales meeting. The GM was running it, just to tell the sales team that Brett asked me, his butler, to give you a call to check in on things.
Yes.
That was digging in that he had a butler. So no, that's not how we roll. You probably never had a butler since in your Lamar travel.
Have not, no. And for the record, I think I stay at more Motel 6s than I have stayed at Nemacolin.
There you go.
Yeah, that was an unreal experience. And I just remember asking John Miller, I was like, is this what we do? He was like, absolutely not. He's like, something's off here. But I'll never forget that story, because I think again, going back to the relationships and the memories, I think one of the beautiful things about Lamar and what we do and kind of your leadership is, you're constantly mentoring people. So for me, that was a mentoring opportunity, but also simultaneously, what is amazing about our company is we have these, in your case, 21 GMs, 2 territory managers, and countless reps and real estate folks, et cetera, that run the ops teams. Is having that collective group of 21 people come together, collaborate. Hey, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? And we always use the word special sauce. In my opinion, that's one of the biggest special sauces that exist in our space, is the ability for our GMs to talk with each other and test and learn things under our regional leadership like yourself.
Well, we're fortunate. Sean Riley, and he mentions it every now and then in our quarterly investor calls, we truly are decentralized. We rely on the field to lead the field. And there's not a lot of initiative things pushed down from corporate. So that's the good news for the GMs. But the bad news is, hey, we expect you to deliver.
Yep.
I mean, we expect perfection. I tell my GMs, I'll stay out of your way, but the expectation is that you're on your game. And Sean has the same expectation for me and my counterparts.
Yeah. So you've led obviously countless number of teams. You continue to lead. And you've mentored a lot of people, whether you realize it from afar or not. What qualities are you looking for as you continue to develop future leaders in Lamar, especially at this point in your career?
When I look to hire or promote someone to a GM, the number one quality I want is I want them to want the job. And here we go, old man again. You'd be amazed. I mean, the questions people ask you: hey, how many hours do I got to work? How many days off do I have? Do I have to come in the office? How many days can I work? To me, when I came up, all the wrong questions.
Yep.
Got to want the job. I'll tell you a funny story, interesting story, true story. When I moved up in '97, we bought Penn Advertising. I knew I was going to have 3 offices open. I had met with those GMs, and they weren't going to fit, so we just didn't keep them. And I offered 3 people those positions. Chris Prickett, a territory manager today, Don Riley, and both were already with Lamar. So it's not like I discovered these guys, and both were superstars. Don Riley, regional manager today, and I offered one other guy one, and he turned me down, and I was shocked. So I had been working in Mississippi, and Chris Cockrell was up the street, a sales manager in Jackson, Mississippi. And he called me. He didn't know that I was rejected by this guy. He said, look, I want to move. I want to get in the game. My wife's right. Again, wife willing to move, rare. Renee, she said, let's go. And so I said, come up, and I don't have anything for you, which was kind of a lie. I said, but just come up and we'll meet. And so first thing he told me was, my wife told me that when I walk through the door and I get home, tell me where we're moving. Chris wanted the job. He didn't even know what the job was. He wanted to be a GM. Wow. So you follow his career. He hit it out of the park in Rochester, New York, moved to Providence, crushed it, hired Chris Avendot, and now runs our biggest office in New York City. So that's a great quality. Want the job. And the other thing is just, little things. Follow the golden rule. Treat people well. Read people. Be a great judge of character. Helps. Chris Cockrell has got more people promoted that he's hired to GM than anyone I know. I mean, there's a handful of our GMs out there all hired by Chris Cockrell. So those intangible things are, they're relevant, very relevant.
Yeah, and I love that because I think oftentimes people overthink. I'm thinking back to like 40 years ago, if you were to go into an interview and be like, how many times do I have to come in the office? They'd be like, what?
Yeah, right.
It's a big job. Yeah, you're going to come in the office. Unless you're driving the truck or cutting down the tree, like you have to be here. But no, I love that because oftentimes people overthink that, like, how do I become a leader? And it's like, you said it earlier, more or less be a sponge, listen, be willing, be a part of it, be willing to move, be willing to embrace challenges, hurricanes, and learn new things quickly. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like, do what you love. My daughter this morning, I don't know how to handle this, so maybe you can kind of help me here as a therapy session. But my daughter's like, you love your job too much. All you talk about is how much you love your job. And I'm like, and my only response is like, I hope one day that you have a career path that you love so much what you do. Now, granted, I care about my family more than my career, but I also love coming to work every day. But I found that interesting, Paul. Here's a 13-year-old that it's like, you love your job so much. And I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, does she have friends that, when she sleeps over, their dads are just like, drinking beers and like they have the worst job in the world? Like, but it's interesting because it was a teachable moment for me to be like, yes, I love what I do. And I hope one day you get to do the same thing.
Yeah. I don't have the answer to that. I think it's, again, cultural. It's ingrained in people now to gravitate to a job that work-family balance is important, which that's one good thing about this. I agree with it. I think it's great. The last couple of times, Tammy Duncan called our HR director and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this day as a day off from here. And twice, and both times I said, you bet, absolutely. The work's still getting done.
Yep.
People are appreciative of that. But all that aside, it sure does help if you like your job. I mean, why wouldn't you? And do something you like.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, find a different career.
Find something you like, right?
Yeah, because this is your life. It should be a part of it. Yeah. So I know you have a lot of accolades and awards and all these different trophies per se throughout your career here, but what has been the most rewarding part of your career so far?
A couple of things. One, I gave you the Pittsburgh example. That was bold and it was transformative. That was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And one thing probably I like most about what I do, I like walking around a building, but I really like acquisitions.
Yep.
And the region, and this isn't anything I do great. All my counterparts do the same thing. Sean, now Ross Riley and M&A. The region when I started was 30 million in revenue. Now it's 320 million in revenue. Wow. That's pretty cool. Yep. And to have a front row seat, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's great that I was involved with at the level we were with the startup digital and just growing the company through acquisitions and again through our checkbook. Don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed that too. That's been fun.
Yeah, I don't think people truly realize how much the out-of-home industry has significantly changed, let alone within Lamar. Like I love sharing the stories. We had lunch the other day here at corporate, and with some of our, I say younger employees, some of our, employees that have been here less than 5 or 10 years, we were sharing what we used to have to do in national sales. And I was at the very end of this, but some folks were sharing that like, yeah, we used to have to like take a map and put stars on the map for where our billboards were, fax them over, and you'd have to wait for them to respond. So just, yes, technology, but just the evolution of the industry and the back side of things is something that people didn't really focus on. It was like, oh, wow, the glitz and the glamour of Times Square, look at these beautiful billboards. But people don't realize how far we've come from the internal aspect of our company and how much that's significantly changed.
And it's continued, especially in marketing support. AI is going to be pretty cool.
Yep.
And it's here. I mean, I'm not so naive to think, 5 years from now, this thing's coming around. Oh, no, it's here. And how we embrace it, and a lot of opportunity for efficiencies. It's cool. About 2 years ago, I asked Sean Riley, I said, I hate laying people off, during COVID or recession, when you'd have to lay people. I just don't like doing it. Just by definition, you're laying off the least tenured people. That's a definition of layoff. And a lot of times they're your most productive people. And so that's problematic for me. So the concept I can't stand. And I was hoping that I asked Sean, I said, what's AI going to do to us? Hoping he wasn't going to say we're going to lay people off. And I asked him, I said, you think we're going to have to lay people off? And he said, no, that's not the intent. He said, the intent is in a bad month where we're 60 or 70% occupied, go to 90% occupancy. That's the intent. So, and I agree with it. and I think we can. And as a shareholder, God bless, man. If we could pull that off, that's terrific.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And that was my last question for you. Like, what excites you about the future? And yeah, to kind of continue down that conversation of AI, I think we're looking about it the right way, especially in our space. Like, of course, certain industries, cuts may happen, but I agree with you. I think the thing, Paul, that really excites me and why I love what I do is the thousands of different people that I get to interact with internally within the company and externally. Is I think that it really creates more efficiencies to allow us to be what we really are, which is like really great storytellers, really great relationship builders, whether it's from a new acquisition on like why you should sell your company to Lamar to, a local AE trying to maximize revenue to a sales manager trying to, occupy our digital unsold space and get, rate on it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think how we challenge ourselves with it and how we embrace it is going to be up to folks like yourself on the leadership side to take kind of that other gamble. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, with the AI, I know it's powerful and it's exciting. And I read and listen to anything I can because, like I said earlier, I know I don't have the answers. I can't create it, but I do want to embrace it. And I think going forward, rate and occupancy is going to grow this company. AI is going to help in market support, real granular data on prospective customers. That's going to help. We'll continue to acquire. We have, this is public information. They just talked about it on our investor call last week. We have over $1 billion available for acquisitions. We continue to convert digital. And so, what's fun? What do I want to look forward to? How big we can go, how fast we can go. And we projected $2.5 billion in revenue by 28. And beyond 28, I think that can continue to grow with all those tools, greenfield development, acquisitions, digital. It's exciting. It's cool to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, and then maybe the only AI thing that we really embrace is we do get to go back to Neiman Colon and your butlers are robots. That'd be fantastic. So what I'll kind of leave our listeners with this. What I've loved always about you is you've always been thoughtful about your decisions that you've made, whether it's tech, whether it's change, whether it's an acquisition. And, that's one of the things that I've loved about our friendship, but professional relationship as well is you're always kind of understand that like, hey, I may not be the person that's helping develop this technology, but I'm going to help embrace it and showcase how we as a company can actually utilize it and not, do tech for tech's sake. It's how do we truly make it impactful? Because I see a lot of companies are embracing AI, embracing former tech, and it's just kind of like you're doing nothing with it. You're just doing these obscure press releases. But truly embracing that tech has been one of those, I would say, hallmarks of your career, from my opinion, selfishly heading up innovation and digital for the company.
It's been fun. It's been fun, and we're not done. We're not done.
Yeah. What's last question for you? If you could go back to, how old were you? Probably 18,
21,
19?
just turned 21.
Yeah. 21-year-old Paul Gartland at Xavier, besides having a phenomenal basketball program, what would you tell yourself what to look forward to into the future?
It wasn't lost on me that I was new and probably out of my comfort zone. I was out of my comfort zone in a big way. If I had to go back, I would have probably been a little more worldly. I was selling billboards. I could tell you they're 12 by 25, 14 by 48. They're stationary or rotary, and here's how much printing cost. And I should have brought more to the table. I should have known what was going on in the community. I should have been a resource for prospective advertisers. I should have been able to talk about world events. And I was so narrow-minded and focused. I had to do well. I had to, I probably could have brought more to the table, and I just wasn't thinking along those lines. I wish I could have done that then.
Yeah. But here you are today making massive helpful decisions for the company as well. So I think you've turned around and accomplished that for sure. Well, look, this has been super fun. Again, I told you it would be special for me. You've always been someone that I've looked up to. I think a lot more than 700 people look up to you. So I'm excited for the rest of not just Lamar, but people out there in the world that do business with us and don't, to just kind of learn a little bit more about one of our executive leaderships and someone that's at the pulse at all times. So it's great to see you, my friend.
It's good. I appreciate it, and that was fun. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.